Hi friends, thank you for taking time out of your week to spend a little with me. I appreciate you. This week we're taking a look at a cold case from 1993 that was recently solved. This was a suggestion from Kenny, so thank you in advance. As always, I ask you all to join me as we remember Carmen Van Huss. Carmen Hope Van Huss was born on October 9, 1973, in Indianapolis, Indiana, to parents James and Andrea. She was one of 4 children. When Carmen was very young, her parents divorced, but she remained close to both parents. As a teen, Carmen attended Lawrence Central High School, where teachers alleged she struggled with schoolwork. Carmen eventually dropped out and instead pursued her GED. She was described as being trustworthy and lovable, and according to her family, Carmen was not a troublemaker and had a passion for animals. Initially, Carmen wanted to be a veterinarian, but as she grew, she discovered her true passion was art. After earning her GED, she started art school at the Indiana University, Purdue University, Indianapolis. In addition to school, Carmen worked as a waitress at Pizza Hut. Carmen was hardworking, and she looked forward to her future. On the evening of March 22, 1993, Carmen was at Community Hospital South visiting her sick grandmother. Her family from her father's side were in attendance. As the night carried on, Carmen, her father, and her youngest brother decided it was time to head home. Carmen drove them to their house in Southside Indianapolis. That evening, the weather was bad and cold. When they arrived at her father's home shortly after 9:30, James Sr. suggested Carmen stay over. James was concerned. Carmen had to drive over 20 miles in the middle of the night to make it back to her apartment. He felt the conditions weren't safe for a young woman to traverse by herself, but Carmen claimed she could not stay, even if she wanted to. She needed to make it back home in order to wash her work uniform for her shift the following day. James understood her obligations, so Carmen said goodbye to her family and headed home. The following morning, March 24th, Carmen's manager at Pizza Hut grew concerned. Carmen was late for her shift, and she didn't call the restaurant to let them know she wouldn't be there. Her manager retrieved her employee file and called her emergency contact, James Sr. When James received the call, he informed her manager there must be something going on, because Carmen wouldn't just shrug off her responsibilities. James called Carmen's apartment but received no answer, so he decided to drive over there to make sure everything was okay. James arrived at the Turtle Creek North Apartments, where he was met with a notice on her door. The notice was from the property managers advising Carmen to keep the noise down and be mindful of her fellow neighbors. James thought this was odd, since Carmen was alone that week. Carmen did live with her boyfriend at the time, but he was out of town. Another reason James felt better about his daughter staying at his house. James knocked on the door, calling out for Carmen, but there was no answer. He tried one more time before just letting himself in. Once the door cracked open, James was met with a horrific scene. The apartment was in shambles, a knocked-over table, clothing thrown on the floor, and Carmen was found partially nude on her back next to the bed. There was a large pool of blood near her head and blood splatter around her body. James, shaken by the discovery of his daughter, left the apartment immediately and called the police. Police arrived shortly thereafter and secured the scene. One thing was clear: Carmen put up a fight. They determined from the overturned furniture the assault started in the living room before progressing to the bedroom. In the living room, there were remnants of a fast food meal and several beer bottles, which led investigators to believe Carmen likely knew her attacker. Along with the trash from around the apartment, a white paper sack stained with blood was found in the kitchen trash. Everything was collected as evidence. From Carmen's autopsy, the medical examiner noted she was stabbed 61 times in her head, face, and abdomen, likely with a screwdriver or a similar object. Her left earlobe was also injured, from her earring being ripped from her ear. Neighbors were interviewed to see if anyone heard or saw anything suspicious. Her next-door neighbor reported that around 11 p.m. they heard a male and a female voice laughing in the hallway before they entered the apartment. Then, several hours later, between 1 and 3 a.m., the neighbor heard the female yelling, "Get off of me! "Get off of me." A different neighbor also claimed they heard a disturbance. When the noise finally stopped, the neighbor heard hurried steps leaving the apartment. The apartment below Carmen's stated during the early hours of March 23rd, he heard screams, a woman crying, slamming and banging noises, and a male voice arguing with a woman for about 30 minutes. Between the three neighbors, no one called the police. They instead complained to the management of the apartment complex. Management left a note on Carmen's door scolding her for being inconsiderate of her fellow neighbors. No one checked on her the night of or the following morning. Marion County submitted the DNA gathered at the scene in hopes of building a profile for their assailant. However, instead of submitting the DNA recovered from the unknown attacker, they submitted the wrong DNA kit. The results showed the attacker came back as a female of European descent, which meant they provided Carmen's DNA. Upon realization of the error, the correct samples were submitted and a profile was built. With a profile in their possession, police branched the investigation from beyond the apartment complex. Carmen's friends and family were interviewed, including both her current boyfriend and her ex-boyfriend. Her boyfriend at the time lived with her, but had a solid alibi, since he wasn't in the state at the time of her death. His DNA was compared to the attacker's, and it was cleared of any involvement. As mentioned, her ex-boyfriend was also considered. According to reports, the ex, although acting a bit strange toward investigators, was cooperative. He also had an alibi, and his DNA was not a match. In the years that followed, police interviewed dozens of people and followed up on hundreds of leads, but all were unsuccessful, and Carmen's case was declared cold. In 2013, the DNA collected from the scene was uploaded to CODIS, but unfortunately, no matches were found. Then in 2015, interest in Carmen's case was revitalized by Detective Sergeant William Carter. Detective Carter set up a GoFundMe to raise funds for a new DNA test of the evidence collected in the case. The goal was to raise $996, but he was able to raise $1,200 in a little over a day. He was able to pay for the new testing and added the remaining amount to a reward fund for Carmen. However, rumors spread regarding Detective Carter's placement on the case, specifically that he was removed from her case, which turned out to be true. Carmen's family, along with the public, petitioned for him to be reinstated on the case. The situation gained widespread coverage. Because of the efforts, the police department held a conference to clarify why they made the decision they did. Detective Carter wasn't technically removed from the case, and it definitely wasn't due to the fundraising efforts, but instead because of the results from a review of assignments and procedures. It was explained that Carter was not a cold case investigator, but worked for another unit and was working on her case in his spare time for the previous 2 years. In the end, he was assigned to the case, but the funds raised were returned to donors. In 2018, the unknown DNA sample was submitted to Parabon Nanolabs as another effort to help solve the case with forensic genetic genealogy. Genetic genealogy was a newer investigative tool that took unknown DNA and identified it by comparing it to family members who voluntarily submitted their DNA samples to a database. Then, 5 years later, their efforts paid off. Parabon contacted Indianapolis police and explained they had a potential person of interest. A relative of the attacker submitted their DNA, and they received the last name Shepard. Using online records, investigators were able to determine who was living near Carmen with the same name: Dana Shepard. Dana, who was 21 in 1993, was her neighbor. Their apartment buildings were connected internally by a shared common area. Investigators looked at multiple arrest records from 1992 to 1996 to confirm Dana lived in the same complex, and at the time of her murder, he was living at Turtle Creek Apartments. The detective even looked into how close Dana's apartment was to hers, and it took them just 30 seconds to get to her door. In February of 2024, a warrant was obtained for Dana's DNA. Dana, who lived in Columbia, Missouri, was likely shaken when detectives approached him at his place of employment. Dana, now 52, was a janitor at the University of Missouri. Police obtained a cheek swab from Dana, and by June, detectives had their answers. The DNA from Dana matched the DNA retrieved from Carmen's body. Finally, after 31 years, Carmen's family had answers. On August 20th, 2024, Dana was arrested in Boone County, Missouri, on the charges of murder, felony murder, and assault. He declined to speak to investigators after he was taken into custody. The following day, he appeared in court via video where he was denied bond and an extradition hearing was scheduled for September 26th. He was held in Boone County Jail until then. Dana's extradition hearing was held on November 7, 2024, where Judge Kimberly Shaw ordered him to be sent to Marion County, Indiana, immediately to face trial. On November 11, 2024, Dana was transported to Indiana. Dana Shepard currently sits in the Marion County Jail awaiting his jury trial, which is currently set for March 24, 2025. After the announcement of Dana's arrest, a press conference was held where Carmen's younger brother Jimmy spoke on behalf of the Van Huss family. He stated, "She wasn't able to experience her college graduation or have a wedding, or any life events. She was taken from me when I was a freshman in high school, and I'm thankful that finally the man that did it is where he needs to be. For my dad to find his daughter after what was brutally done makes this day bittersweet. I wish he was here to see it." Jimmy was joined by the Indianapolis police and other agencies. Chief Kendall Adams spoke as well. For 31 years, the family of Carmen has been searching for answers and justice. While nothing can ever replace their loved one, we hope that today's arrest brings them some measure of peace. Carmen Van Huss was laid to rest in Calvary Cemetery in Indianapolis, Indiana. This case is currently ongoing. Hi friends, if you made it this far, thank you so much for watching. As always, I'm interested in hearing your thoughts, so share them below and we can chat about this case. If you found this to be informative, please consider giving the video a thumbs up to let YouTube know you want more from me. And lastly, if you're not subscribed yet, you should, because we would love to have you under the ash tree. I will continue to update as updates become available in Carmen's case. Dana's trial is next month, so hopefully this chapter will come to a close for her family and friends. Thank you again, Kenny, for sharing Carmen's case with us. I appreciate you taking the time. And thank you to all of you who choose to tune in. You don't have to, and it means the most that you choose to. So truly, thank you. I hope you all have the best week ahead of you because you deserve it, but for now, we must part ways. So stay safe out there, and I will see you in the next one. Bye, friends.